A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Molan lave. When the Persians demanded that the Greeks surrender their weapons, it is said that King Leonidas responded with this phrase, which means, "Come and get them. I stand with Leonidas." When considering the true meaning of the Second Amendment, one needs to consider only the following: the wordage used, the conditions under which it was written, its place of priority, and the words of its authors. All of these considerations combined leave no argument as to the reasoning behind, therefore the meaning of, the Second Amendment. Okay, before we look at these considerations, it needs to be understood that the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, or the Bill of Rights, including the Second Amendment, were written to acknowledge, not grant, and there is a difference, certain unalienable rights, not inalienable, and again, there's a difference, that belong to the citizens as a birthright just because we were born, and to constrain the government's ability to tamper with them. Now, let's take a look at the actual wordage of the Second Amendment. It says, well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. They knew that this government, as long as it was going to remain free, would have to have an army under its command. So because it had an army under its command, the people should be equally armed. Simply the wordage. If they had meant the militia to be armed, they would have said, necessary to the security of a free state, the right of that militia. They didn't say that. They said the right of the people. Okay? Next, let's talk about the conditions under which the Second Amendment was written. We had just broke away from England and committed treason. These men, had they been caught, would have been hanged for committing treason against the King of England. Okay? They knew that this new government they were creating would one day, or might one day, rise up and get a little bit too big for its britches, just like the government of England was, and that future citizens of this government might have to do the same thing they were doing right now. And in order for the future citizens to have that ability and any chance at success, had they needed to do that, they would have to be armed equally with the military that was under the government's control, just like our founding fathers were armed equally with the armies of Britain. Okay? Third, what is the implied priority of the Second Amendment? If you'll notice, it was the Second Amendment. That implied priority means the forefathers knew that it was a very, very important right that needed to be under the control of the people and not the government, second only to freedom of speech and freedom of religion. And actually, without the right to keep and bear arms, the freedom of religion and freedom of speech could easily be taken away from you, as it has been done so many times in history. Okay? So, in that sense, the Second Amendment may actually be more important than the first. Finally, what did the Founding Fathers said about the Second Amendment? Well, James Madison, who is credited to be the author of the Bill of Rights, said, "The Constitution preserves the advantage of being armed which Americans possess over the people of almost every other nation where the governments are afraid to trust the people with arms." George Mason, who is credited to be a co-contributor with James Madison to the Bill of Rights, said, "What is the militia? It is the whole people except for a few public officials." He also said, to disarm the people, that was the best and most effectual way to enslave them. In an article by the Catholic Journal US, it is stated that in drafting the U.S. Constitution, our founding fathers feared above all else centralized government. They understood that power, once gained, would accumulate, then corrupt, and inevitably subvert liberty. One last thought. Is gun control really necessary? According to statistics like the ones you're looking at right now, if everything goes right, firearm-related deaths are almost negligible when compared to other means. If we're really concerned about removing the means for people to die, maybe we should more strictly govern diet, exercise, and tobacco. With this understanding of the Second Amendment and all of the factors surrounding it, there should be no argument for what its purpose is. The Second Amendment says, of the people, not of the militia. It was written to ensure future citizens would have the ability to repeat the acts of our forefathers should that ever become necessary. It was obviously one of the most important rights our forefathers could think of, second only to freedoms of religion and speech. And through their own subsequent statements, the authors have made clear the meaning and purpose of the Second Amendment. Finally, the threat of guns to the public welfare has been greatly exaggerated. In conclusion, it should be clear that the Second Amendment was written to ensure that the rights of the citizens and not some government-controlled organization was never infringed. Thank you for your time.